Hello everyone, and welcome to the Knit California podcast. My name is Leslie. I am Knit California here on YouTube and also over on Instagram and TikTok. And today I've got and today I'm coming at you with a pattern roundup. I know the Ranunculus pattern that I'm currently wearing is kind of a controversial pattern in the knitting world. I see a lot of people talk about it. I see a lot of people love it. I see a lot of people making it. And I also see some hate for it online. Specifically on like Reddit and just a lot of people talking about how like we get it. It's a pattern that everyone has made. And I have thrown my own voice into that ring because I have made the Ranunculus pattern not once, but twice. The saying was coming to my mind, so nice, I knit it twice. And I do have to say that like, originally I was like not a fan. I think probably in just my gut reaction response to the cover photos that are on Ravelry, but after realizing that I could make one that looked completely different to those photos and that really fits like my vibe and my style, I love this pattern. I really love the lace yoke. I think this is something that... What are you guys doing? Can you go lay down? I think the circular yoke and the lace pattern itself is just absolutely gorgeous, and I think it's very flattering on a lot of people. I also really like the customability. That's not a word. I like that you have the option to customize the pattern based off the yarn you want to use, both the fiber content and the yarn weight. It does have like a set gauge in the pattern, but you can also take whatever gauge you're knitting up with whatever yarn you're using, do a little bit of math, and get a size that works for you and a finished object that works for you. So I liked this pattern so much. I have already knit it twice, like I mentioned, and honestly, I don't know if I would like to knit it a third time. So what I have done is I put a call out to see if anybody knew of patterns that were similar to the Ranunculus, and I have gathered up, I think I have 14 patterns in this bundle, but a couple of them are like two patterns that are really one pattern, if that makes sense. We'll go through it. But I thought it would be fun to talk through all of these patterns with you in case you are like me and you like this Ranunculus pattern, but you don't need to keep making them over and over and over and over again. Before we get into the patterns, I want to say a huge thank you to our sponsor for this week's video, Ana Luisa. Ana Luisa, as a jewelry brand, is here to elevate your everyday. Their pieces are timeless and classic, and honestly, they go with all of my knits. Ana Luisa reached out to me and asked if I would be interested in becoming a VIP with them, which I graciously and excitedly agreed to. So for the next few months, I will be partnering with Ana Luisa to show you the latest from their collections and my favorite pieces that go, again, with all of my knits. What I like about Ana Luisa is both their commitment to sustainability as well as just the classic and elegant pieces that they offer. I am very partial to their earrings, but they also have necklaces, bracelets, and rings to fit almost anyone's style. I was super excited to see these heart dangly earrings on the Ana Luisa website because they're very similar and almost a dupe for the heart dangly earrings that Taylor Swift has been seen in, both in the Anti-Hero video challenge as well as I think there's a photo of her in these earrings at Electric Lady Studios where she records all of her music. But anyway, this is definitely like a Taylor Swift style reference. fragrance. I also picked up some earrings that I've been wearing literally every day non-stop. A mini, plain, simple, classic gold hoop earring. What I like about the gold hoop earring is that it's fully connected front and back, so my hair doesn't get caught in like the dangliness of it. And I have been sleeping in these earrings, I've been showering in these earrings, I've been swimming in these earrings, and they have stayed put, not gotten messed up at all, and look really great. That's one of the other pieces that I really love about Ana Luisa in general, is all of their pieces are long lasting and tarnish resistant no matter how much you wear them. If you're interested in any of the pieces that I talked about today, or if you're browsing the website and see something that you love, I have a 20% off discount code for Ana Luisa Jewelry, and it is KnitCalifornia20. So I will have the link to Ana Luisa's website in the description box down below, as well as the code, again, if you see anything that you're interested in and would love to check it out. So thank you again to Ana Luisa for sponsoring today's video. So let's get into the patterns. First, what I was really looking for when I was choosing patterns to include in this bundle, I wanted something that had some sort of lace yoke. I think this is like the main detail of the pattern and a piece that I particularly was drawn to. So I really wanted something that had a lace yoke, and I was also looking for something with kind of a large gauge. So the Ranunculus pattern recommends a gauge of 14 stitches per 4 inches, and I didn't necessarily get 14 stitches per 4 inches when I knit this, but I was able to do the math and choose a size based on the gauge that I had to give me the circumference that I wanted, and all of the math that went along with that. So I was looking for something with, the patterns didn't necessarily need to have a 14 stitch gauge, but I was looking for something with a little bit of a larger gauge so that you could choose to use a fingering weight yarn if you wanted something like light and airy, a DK weight yarn, or maybe even like a summer worsted weight yarn in order to knit up these patterns. So without further ado, the first pattern that I want to talk about is another one of Midori Hirose's patterns. So Midori Hirose is the designer of the Ranunculus, and I thought, let's just start and look through all of her other patterns to see if there's anything else in there that I would consider similar to the Ranunculus. And there was one that was recommended to me and that I would put in this category, and that pattern is called the Satawal. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but I've got my notes here, just FYI. This is a worsted weight pattern. The gauge is 14 stitches per 4 inches, so the exact same gauge as the Ranunculus. It goes from sizes extra small to 4XL, and the pattern is available in multiple languages, so English, Italian, Japanese, and Spanish. The pattern is worked seamlessly from the top down. It has a lace yoke. The one thing about this pattern that is like a little bit iffy for me is it does have a boat neck. I think boat necks are very hit or miss, but I really loved the lace design on this pattern, and I also just really loved the model in the first photo for this pattern. She models a couple of Midori's patterns on Ravelry, and she brings me joy. This pattern is very similar to the Ranunculus in the fact that you can use any weight of yarn, from fingering to DK to worsted weight. It specifically says in the pattern the degree of transparency depends on the weight of the yarn. The sizes for this pattern go from an extra small to a 4XL, which corresponds to actual bust circumference of 32 inches to 50 inches. That's 81 centimeters to 126 centimeters. So this pattern is not fully size inclusive, which I did not realize when I put it on like number 1 on the list. So my apologies for that. It's unfortunate. You know how you assume that like if a designer has one pattern that's size inclusive, all the rest will be size inclusive, and then it's just disappointing when they're not. But Anyways, the needle size recommended for this pattern is a 6mm needle. So again, I was really drawn to the lace work on this pattern, and I think it would be a nice similar pattern to the Ranunculus. Pattern number 2 is the Wilfreda, and this is a Norwegian design, so I'm apologies for butchering the designer's name here. This pattern is by Wench Rald. Maybe. This is a circular yoke design with a nice lace panel right across the top. It is recommended for a DK weight yarn at a 16 stitch gauge per 4 inches. The recommended needle size is 6mm needles, and the sizes available go from XX small to 4XL. It's recommended to have a 4 to 6 inch positive ease. The sizes correspond to 36 inches to 65.5 inches. That's 91.5 to 166.5 centimeters. Again, a 16 stitch gauge is relatively large, especially with a DK weight yarn, so it's got those similar properties to the Ranunculus, and you could definitely substitute a fingering or a worsted weight yarn as long as you're close to meeting that gauge, or do the math to figure out what size you should make. The lace detail has a small cable design in it, which is something that's a bit different to the Ranunculus. So if that's something that you're interested in, this may be a pattern for you to check out. Pattern number 3 on the list is Willa by This Bird Knits. This pattern is similar because it has the lace yoke design, but it is recommended in a light fingering weight yarn with an 18 stitch gauge using 5mm needles. So it is meant to have that light and airy vibe, similar to if you were to make a fingering weight Ranunculus. And the size range goes from size 1 to size 7, which corresponds to a 45.3 inch to 71.1 inch bust circumference. The lace design on this is more of just like a single panel, so a little bit less than all that you get with the Ranunculus. But it's still got those eyelets and open stitches and a little bit of like a scallop detail, which is pretty nice. The 4th pattern in this bundle is the Maya Top by Gabriella Treminio. The lace yoke on this is relatively deep, similar to the Ranunculus. It is recommended to knit this in a fingering weight yarn at a 16 stitch gauge. So again, that's one where it is recommended a fingering weight, but you could use DK or worsted if you're close at all to that 16 stitch gauge. And the sizes available go from 36 inches up to 62 inch bust. I think this pattern is like very, very similar to the Ranunculus in that I think if I like knit it in the same yarn, I could get basically the same sweater just with a different like lace yoke pattern, which is something that I'm very interested in. The next pattern on the list is Ilha by Orlaine Suke. It might be, is it French? So this is actually a full sleeve sweater pattern, but the yoke again is a lace yoke, I think similar to the Ranunculus. This one is super interesting because similar to one of the previous ones, it does have cable details in it that I think are really cool, and I think the little cable, they're like short cables, I think they just bring an extra dimension to the yoke of your sweater. But this is recommended to be knit in fingering weight yarn at a 21 stitch gauge, so definitely a smaller gauge than any of the other patterns that we've looked at before. However, 21 stitches is often a gauge that people can reach with a DK weight yarn. So I personally, without having actually knit this yet, would say you could probably sub in, you could use a fingering weight yarn or sub in a DK weight yarn to knit this sweater. As always too, you can always modify it to be short sleeve instead of have the full long sleeves, which is why I included it on this pattern roundup. Oh, and this is really cute. So this is from the pattern description. Ilha is named after the art of basket weaving art from the Portuguese village Ilha. The textured yoke adorns the top of the sweater with a set of stitches reminiscent of braiding and weaving. That's exactly what it is, with the little cables that are braided together. It's gorgeous. I think it's beautiful. This one is definitely jumping closer to the top of the list for me after looking at it for a little bit longer. Pattern number 6 in this bundle is the No Need To Panic Sweater by Casapinka. This pattern also very similar in look and style and feel to the Ranunculus. It's got a broad lace yoke section at the top, and then very simple. I mean, this pattern photo that I'm looking at is very similar to the one that I'm wearing. It's got short sleeve, it's got ribbing at all of the edges, and the lace yoke, while different, looks similar. It gives you that similar vibe. The recommended yarn for this pattern is a DK weight, and the gauge is 20 stitches per 4 inches, so that is pretty on par with a DK weight gauge. Again, you could likely knit this in fingering weight if you wanted a more open and airy sweater at that 20 stitch gauge. And the needle size for this is a 4.5mm needle, and the size range goes from size 1 to size 9, which corresponds to a finished chest circumference of 40 inches up to 72 inches, or 101.5 centimeters to 183 centimeters. Now that I'm looking at this again, I think I just mentioned it was the Maya top that was very closely similar to the Ranunculus. I have to put this No Need to Panic sweater also up there in that category. It looks extremely similar with the lace yoke, and definitely one that I would be interested in making. Pattern number 7 in this bundle is the Crescendo Summer top by the Knit Pearl Girl. This pattern overall is similar to the Ranunculus in that it's a short sleeve top with a lace yoke. However, the lace yoke does give off different vibes, as it's not a full lace yoke similar to this, but instead its detailing are these 2 rows of diamonds, which I think is just gorgeous. This is a DK weight pattern with a recommended gauge of 22 stitches per 4 inches. So again, you could use DK, and you could probably get away with a fingering weight yarn if you're close to reaching this gauge, or if you're open to doing a little bit of math. The recommended needle size is a 4mm needle, and the sizes available go from size A to size K, which corresponds to a finished garment size of 32.5 to 58.5 inches, which is 82.5 to 148 centimeters. And the recommended amount of positive ease is about 1 to 3 inches, or 2.5 to 8 centimeters on this pattern. I think if you liked the Ranunculus but want a lace yoke design that is stunning, really stands out, but is different for this, this is an option for you. Pattern number 8 in this bundle is the Magna Flora by Elisa Hartzell. The lace yoke on this pattern is like a zigzag chevron design that I think is really cute. It is knit up in worsted weight, though it's using the Sandnes Garn Line, which is a cotton linen viscose, I believe, yarn blend, so it's a summer blend yarn with that 14 stitch gauge. So that's the same gauge as the Ranunculus, so leading me to believe that, similar to how we knit the Ranunculus, if you wanted to use a fingering weight yarn, if you wanted to use a DK weight yarn, or the worsted weight yarn that's recommended in the pattern, you could do that if you're meeting the gauge, or if you're doing the math to get the size that you would like. I know I'm saying that on every single pattern, but I just want to reiterate that fact. The recommended needle size is 5.5mm needles, and the sizes available go from a 36-inch bust up to a 66-inch bust, or a 96 to 168 centimeter inch, not centimeter inch, centimeter bust. The Magna Flora is a circular yoke, flower-inspired sweater. It has a simple but striking lace yoke that is a pleasure to have on the knitting needles. That sounds very nice. I would like that. And the Ravelry text on this, it specifically calls out that there are many options with knitting this top. In terms of the length being adjustable, so you can knit it cropped, you can knit it long as you have enough yarn. You can knit the sleeves to any size that you would like, which honestly I think you can do with any pattern as long as you've got the right amount of yarn. And the hem length can be lengthened with an easy repeatable pattern. That is something different on this sweater, is at the bottom hem there is an additional band of lace, which is different and I think cute, but you could also remove that if you were not interested in that at all. But I do think it gives it a nice different additional design element. Pattern number 9 in this bundle is the When in Rome tee, also by This Bird Knit. This Bird Knits had a couple of designs that I really liked. There were some other summer tee designs that I was interested in, though they didn't quite fit the bill for what I was looking for, being exactly similar to the Ranunculus, which is why I didn't include them in this pattern roundup. But if you're looking for other summer tops, I think this is a good designer that you may want to check out. The lace yoke design on this one is very simple. It's one small band of lace, but sometimes...
That's not nice.
Okay, Siri just thought I said simple. It's one small band of ladies' butts. And then he said to me, that's not nice. Siri, that's not what I said. Oh my gosh. That's so funny. Alright, well thank you for the interruption, Siri. I was saying it's one small band of lace, which if that's what you're interested in, maybe you don't want another full yoke that's full lace, this could be an option for you. So it is recommended for a fingering weight yarn at a stitch gauge of 17 stitches per 4 inches. So again, fingering weight, DK weight, maybe worsted. You'd have to play around with the gauge and the math if you were thinking about doing worsted. It has 4 needle sizes listed here, so I'm guessing the majority of the body is knit in this 5.5 millimeter needle, and the others are maybe used for the lace and the ribbing. That's my guess. I haven't read through the pattern, so don't come at me if that's wrong. And the sizes available go from a 44-inch finished circumference to 65.4 inches. That's 112 centimeters to 166 centimeters. This top, it says, this easy breezy top is a fun, fast knit and the newest addition to my addictive knitting collection of lightweight summer tees. So I did look through. This Bird Knits does have a nice collection of summer tee design, again, if you're interested. And another thing that I wanted to point out about this pattern is the recommended yarn is Lavender Loon, who is a yarn dyer, but the base that she has is a 90% superwash merino, 10% linen base, and I'm pretty sure it's a single ply yarn. I've seen a couple people using this yarn recently and I would love to get my hands on it and test it out because I think it sounds really interesting with it mostly being superwash merino but having that 10% linen content. I can just imagine it being really light and breezy but have similar properties to wool, which makes it easier to work with in the summer. So something on my radar. I don't know, maybe I can put it on your radar as well. Okay, pattern number 10 is actually a 2-for-1, and this is the Easy Eyelet Yoke Designs by Knititude. So there is an Easy Eyelet Yoke Light version, which is a fingering weight tee, and then there's also the Easy Eyelet Yoke Sweater, which is an Aran weight full-length sweater. So my thought for this is that if you were not interested in doing the fingering weight version, because let me pull up the... So the fingering weight version does have a recommended gauge of 20 stitches per 4 inches. So you could very easily get away, I think, with using a DK weight yarn in this pattern as well, the light version, depending on what your gauge is, like we've been talking about. But if you're interested in maybe using a worsted or heavier weight, then I would recommend getting the Easy Eyelet Yoke Sweater design, because this is a recommended gauge of 16 stitches per 4 inches. And again, you can always modify it to have short sleeves and use whatever type of yarn you are interested in. But I really like this design because this is one of, I think, Knititude's like more beginner friendly patterns. A lot of her patterns are beginner friendly, but with it being a circular yoke design and having these easy eyelets in it, it makes it both, one, like visually appealing. It is a different type of lace yoke, because it is just rows of eyelets, but I think it's really subtle and stunning at the same time. Let me give you a little bit more information on the Easy Eyelet Yoke Light version, the fingering weight sweater. So again, fingering weight yarn, 20 stitches per 4 inches on a 4mm needle. The size range goes from small to 3XL, which is a 32 to 54 inch bust. Honestly, I'm a little surprised that this only goes up to a 54-inch bust. Okay, the sweater version, the Aran weight version, which is a recommended gauge of 16 stitches per 4 inches. It's knit on a 6mm needle. This one does go up higher, so this is an extra small to a 5XL, which is a 28-inch to a 62-inch bust. So if you're looking to make one of the larger sizes, I guess I would recommend getting the sweater version. And then, again, the recommended gauge is 16 stitches, so that's similar to the Ranunculus. You can play around with the yarn weight, you can play around with a little bit of knitting math to get the size that works best for you. I'm honestly surprised, though, that the fingering weight version is not fully size inclusive, because I'm fairly certain that this designer like frequently talks about her designs being size inclusive. I could be wrong, but anyways, that's the Easy Eyelet Yoke patterns by Knititude. Pattern number 11 is the Simone Pullover by Gabriella Treminio. Yes, this is the second pattern from her that I have on this list. This one is also a little bit different in that it is technically an Aran weight sweater, but I thought the lace yoke design was giving me similar vibes to the Ranunculus, and because the gauge is 16 stitches per 4 inches, I thought we can do that math, we can play with yarn weight, so it would be similar to what we did with the Ranunculus here. This one is a little bit interesting. One of the lace design details is there are a row of baubles. I know baubles are very controversial in the knitting community, so if baubles really aren't your thing, you can always change it up and like do something different for that round. Like do a row of eyelets, do a row of pearl bumps, do like one of these rows where you've got I want to call them like lines, the like yarn overs that go like, well, they're not yarn overs. This was the one where you like knit 3 stitches ahead or something. I don't know. You could do something like that. You could replace the baubles if you're not into them or interested in them, is what I'm trying to get at. But again, Aran weight, 16 stitch gauge, recommended needle size of 6mm needles. The sizes available go from 36 inches to 62 inches. That's 91.5 to 157.5 centimeters. And I think these like full length sweater designs are fun too, because you can knit the full length sweater in like a worsted or Aran weight and get something super cozy, or you can knit it short sleeve and in a DK weight or a fingering weight for something, you know, easy breezy and spring and summer appropriate. So it's almost like two patterns in one. I have said before, and I'll say it again, I am super interested in making another version of the Ranunculus that is a long sleeve sweater made with like full merino wool or something. So that's the beauty of these types of patterns. Okay, I have one last pattern and then I have an honorable mention. So the last pattern on this list is the Muscari Sweater by Midori Hirose. So we started with the Ranunculus, we started with another Midori pattern, and we're ending with a final Midori pattern. I didn't include this one at the top because, again, this is actually a full-length sweater, full-length worsted weight sweater, but I loved the yoke design on this. It's very different. So instead of it being circular like this, it's got these almost like rays that come out from the neck, and I think it's gorgeous. It is recommended to be knit in a worsted weight. The gauge is 14.5 stitches per 4 inches. So the reason why I did add it to this list was it's got the same gauge as the Ranunculus, so we can just do the same thing with our yarn weight, with the math, to get a size that we want. The sizes available for this one are 2XS to 6XL. That's a 35.5 inch to 64.5 inch finished bust circumference. That's 90 centimeters to 164 centimeters. And yeah, it's similar vibes because it's the same designer, but different in general to the Ranunculus, and I thought let's just include something a little bit different if that's what you're interested in. So that's the Muscari Sweater by Midori Hirose. Okay, the honorable mention here, and I'm sure you're probably all shouting at me from wherever you're watching this right now because I got so many recommendations for this pattern being similar to the Ranunculus, and that's the Love Note by Tin Can Knits. To be honest, I'm not a fan of the Love Note. There's something about it that I don't particularly like, and maybe someday I will come around to it. Like maybe it's similar to the Ranunculus in that just I don't like the pattern photos that are on Ravelry. I have seen like a ton of people make this pattern. I think when you think of the Ranunculus, you often also think about the Love Note as like two peas in a pod, very similar. In terms of like they've got the lace yoke, you can knit them in fingering and make them very sheer and light and airy. But there's something about the Love Note that, and I can't put my finger on it, but it's just not one of my favorites. But in case you have never knit the Love Note, which there are 11.7 thousand projects on Ravelry, so maybe you're like me and you're like one of the only people who hasn't knit it. It is recommended DK weight at 16 stitches per 4 inches, and the sizing, this one is fully size inclusive in that like it goes from child size, like 0 to 6 months, all the way up to a 5XL, which is a 72.5 inch bust. It is recommended 4 to 12 inches of positive ease, so that's why that top measurement goes up to 72.5 inches. So that's all I'm gonna say about that. I mean, I do think the leaf motif is cute, but like, it's got some pretty big holes in it that are like right on the bust. I know a lot of people have talked about like modifying the lace yoke so that it sits higher and it's not sitting right over your chest. So just saying, those options are definitely out there. I'm sure a lot of people have talked about them on YouTube or talked about them in their Ravelry notes. So I didn't go and search for them. I'm not planning on making the love note anytime soon. Let's just put that out there. I would much rather make one of these other 12 patterns that I talked about before the love note, before I make the love note. So that's it. That's my pattern roundup. I also wanted to mention that I saved all of these patterns in a bundle on my Ravelry. So you can find my Ravelry in the description box down below, but I am Knit California on Ravelry. And the bundle is called Patterns Similar to the Ranunculus. So if you're interested, I will put a link directly to the bundle as well down below, man, so many things. Also down below, I will have the names and designers and Ravelry links to each of the patterns that I mentioned in this roundup in case you want to go directly to one of those. I'm curious to know if you have knit any of these patterns, so if you have, please leave a comment down below with your experience with them. And if you also like the Ranunculus and you want to make something similar, which of these patterns would you cast on first? I'm also curious to know about that. Thank you again to Ana Luisa for sponsoring this video. Again, click the link in the description box down below to check out all of their jewelry. And that's it for me today. I hope you enjoyed today's video. I hope you got some knitting time in. If this is your first time watching one of my videos, please hit that subscribe button. I do podcast episodes about every other week, if not every week, where I talk about what I'm knitting, my finished objects, my works in progress, and just have a grand old time over here. Thank you again for watching, and I will see you on the next one. Bye!